We'll get her. All right. Silence is golden. So what does silence look like in your life? It's funny, there is sometimes, as I was preparing for the talk, throughout the week, I have a title and I'm just with it. There's I started recognizing there was a seriousness to the idea of silence. And then last night, Julian was out, as he often is as a teenager, and so as mom, I'm usually worried and checking in. Somehow, and Saturday nights, I'm beginning to feel the pressure. They say creativity is pressure, tension, and relaxation combined. And so Saturday nights when I start feeling the tension, and Jack and Julian know I can be a little bit grumpy and just leave me alone. And last night was so different. I was just texting him silly texts, and he didn't know. He's like, I didn't know what to make of it. Who is this person? And then this morning, it's about 8 a.m., and I still have all my notes, but I still don't know the direction of the talk. But I noticed I was just feeling so joyful, and I'm like, this does not make sense. Why am I feeling so joyful? And yet I'm not clear how this whole talk is going. And what I recognize is just being in this idea of silence is golden all week. This joy started bubbling forth. So if there's one main message that we have for today, is that silence is joyful. It is so full of bliss and happiness and peace and love and everything that is good that we want to shift. I've come to the conclusion, our understanding when we hear silence, that it's something very solemn and we have to be quiet and turn off all the happiness to go inside to the seriousness. It's the exact opposite. Whatever happiness we're having out there, it's going to get even more so when we go into the silence. The silence is a beautiful and joyful place to be. When I was, probably when Julian was about 8 or 9, I was feeling I should take that back. He was more about 4 or 5. He's a little guy. And I'm feeling the pressure of trying to do ministry and being a little kid, because you have to be present with our children at different ages in different ways. But when they're little, they need a lot from us. And so I was feeling that, and also ministry, and I felt like I was failing on both places, and I was just stressed, and I was just going all the time. And I went to go see a practitioner, and I'm convincing her with how noisy my life is, and I can't find any peace. And she said, it doesn't matter because the noise is inside your head. It's not happening out there. And that's why we go to practitioners, by the way. Because when I say that, I saw some people nodding, like we know this, but a practitioner reminds us when we forget. And we all need that. We all forget, right? And so we go to someone and they reminded me. She reminded me in that moment, oh, this isn't happening out there, it's happening inside of me. So how do we create that stillness and that silence inside of us when life is busy, when you're trying to move to another state, or you have a schedule full of things to do? Well, the key is to meditate. I hate to say it. No, I don't. I love saying it, but we hear it a lot, but we're going to talk about it a little bit differently. So meditation, so the invitation, so I have 3 points today. One is meditation, and not even try to. An acting teacher said, try to lift your foot. And she's like, you can't try. You either lift it or you don't. So I'm not going to say try to meditate. I'm going to say meditate 10 minutes every day. Of course, you can meditate more, but just to have that moment of sitting in stillness. Our resistance to meditation, so it takes a while to build up. I remember when I started, I did it a little bit at a time. Eventually I could get up to 2 hours, but it took me a while to get there because we're not used to being still that long. So it's not, when people say I'm not a good meditator, nobody is, because we're so used to going, that it takes practice. So that's why we do 10 minutes every day. If you keep doing that, in a year, that 10 minutes is going to be cake. And then you can go on, or you can go more than that. But I discovered it's the way we talk about meditation, or at least the way I was learning about meditation. Maybe you all didn't learn it this way, but I kept hearing the reason why we resist meditation is because the little self, what we used to call the ego, but in our community we know it's the small I. There is no such thing as a separate ego. That little I, that small identity, feels like it's going to be killed because when we go into meditation, it has to get quieter and quieter so it feels like it's death. That is a viewpoint. It's not a very helpful one, because then you don't want to go meditate because, well, I have to sort of die in order to go into meditation, which isn't really that appealing. If we look at it, we're giving our small self a vacation. Is anyone else exhausted by what's been happening in our world for the last 2 years? It's exhausting. And do we know, like when you're a little kid, you don't want to go to sleep because you're so excited by life, but as adults, you're like, I can't wait to go to sleep and fall just to rest. Let it go. Well, that's what the meditation is. You're taking your little self on a vacation. So when I say meditate 10 minutes a day, what I'm saying is take your small self on a vacation for 10 minutes every day. Don't you think you deserve that? Someone did a graph. Here's your day, and they had it all slot out. Here's 10 minutes of meditation. It's like this little line. It's like, it's nothing. It's nothing. 10-minute vacation every day, or a 10-minute rest. Give your small self, it deserves a rest. Besides sleeping at night, your little self, your small self that's navigating everything that needs to be done in this world, give it a rest. Says the airplane. When we allow ourselves to have that moment of rest, what we are connecting with is what we heard in meditation today. We are connecting with this infinite resource. All the joy, all the peace, all the love, all the beauty, that which is real is within us. It's not out there. So if you are longing for more joy, if you are longing for more peace, if you are longing for more peace, love, abundance, for any of that, we don't look outside, we turn within. Everything, the treasures of the kingdom of heaven are inside of us. We spend 10 minutes and we are connecting with that treasure inside of us, that infinite treasure where there is no limit, which far surpasses anything out there. And then when we go off into the day, it starts to permeate our life over and over. And I know everyone here has meditated at one point in your life. It may or may not be regular, but you've done the meditation. And why do we keep doing it? Because we should? Because someone told us to? No, because we start to recognize the gifts that start to permeate our entire life just in 10 minutes. And if you do 10 minutes 2 times a day, then it's even more. But we start to feel, because we are not the source of the infinite good, our small self, as good as our small self is at a lot of different tasks and getting things done, our small self is not great at being able to permeate our entire reality with joy. That's of ourselves, we can't do that, of our small selves. The infinite I am, the divine presence, that's what permeates everything externally. So to connect with that joy, to connect with that light, to connect with that freedom, to connect with that bliss, because it is bliss, we turn within. Silence is golden. Yes, silence is golden. It's beautiful, it's blissful, it's not a have to, it's like, wow. We wouldn't, I guess Americans are known for resisting being on vacation. We have to stop that. Vacations are fun. Take your little infinite self on a vacation every day, and you'll just discover that vacation energy permeates your life. So that's point 1. But then we have our life, right? And so then we are in the middle. We might have a nice 10-minute meditation or longer, but beginning there. And then we go into our life, but immediately our mind starts going with all the things we have to do. And so we hear a lot about bringing that consciousness of meditation into the rest of our day. Bring that peaceful, whatever that connection we have for that moment into our task, into our to-do list, into our relationships, into how we think about the world. Well, that can be pretty hard. There's no question that there's a lot of energy externally coming at us all of the time, and plus our own desire as to participate and do an excellent job and to show up. That takes time, that takes planning. So we can't just dismiss this, what we have to do, not only we have to do, we want to do as our small selves in the world. So one of the techniques that they have found is extremely helpful for us to touch into that golden silence throughout our day is chanting and humming. So my teacher was Yogananda, and he would do 2-hour silent meditations, and he would do periods of 40-minute meditation with chanting, like 5 minutes of chanting beforehand. He always did chanting beforehand because that chanting starts to create a hum in our body. I had a friend, so when we were at Agape, which is a community like this, just much bigger, many of the people would go to Agape, but then they'd have another place that they would go. I don't know if you have that as well. So you have like two spiritual sources. So because the self-realization is where I did all my meditation. I didn't participate in their community. I didn't go to anything else, but they did. They were really good at meditation. There was another place just down the street, so it seemed like half the community would end service and go meditate. So they would go to chant. And so I went with them a couple times, and for them, they didn't really do silent meditation. They did chanting the whole time. Chanting is where you're doing something over and over and over and over and over, but it's out loud. So it would be like singing, I am remembering who I am, and singing that, simple words. You don't have to think about it. And what if you just kept doing that for an hour? What if we just sang that chant over and over and over? Eventually your mind's going to start shutting down in the way it normally thinks. And there's this vibration that starts to happen. And so it was really fun and expansive to be in that community and to experience. They were Hindu, so they did Hindu chants with Hindu sounds. And the idea is that sound reverberates through our body. For any of you who have had any training within Hinduism, they believe the first sound of creation is the Om. That's the Om sign right there. And that it was spelled in English for a while O-M, but it's really A-U-M. The way I like to think of it is as opening to close, so it's Om. And you want to hold that because it's that that opens up the heart even more. So you just do the rich wholeness of the sound. And when you do that sound, and I know you all have had the experience of doing that sound, your body starts to vibrate. There becomes a vibration in your body that is healing, that is calming. So I have a cousin who teaches yoga. She actually owns her own yoga studio in Philadelphia. And she has that little bit of a rebel side too. And she says, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've come to the conclusion there's nothing special about the Hindu Sanskrit sounds. I haven't had any greater experience with that than I do with just regular humming. And then she started sharing all this research that it turns out regular old humming has the same impact as Om, including humming your favorite tune. It does not matter what you're humming. It's that vibration that's going through your body. So what they're discovering is it lowers your heart rate and your blood pressure really fast. So you can be going, but if you just start humming, you're going to find everything start calming down instantly. Then they also have some research that says it opens up your sinus, it gets nitrous oxide. Another study was saying that it releases oxytocin, that same feeling of when we get touched, we feel love. It's that love hormone. It releases oxytocin when you hum. It does all these magnificent things, and it silences our running mind. So humming while you're driving, humming while you're going through emails. You can be doing emails. That is something you can do automatically. You don't have to think about humming. You just hum. And you notice little kids do it all the time. Kids just hum away because there's something in them that knows the power of humming. Silence is golden. The humming opens us up to that stillness in the midst of activity. It is hard unless you've been really anchored in meditation. Meditation is about being still in the midst of activity, knowing that stillness, and that is absolutely possible. And the more we practice it, the more we can experience that. But if you're struggling, or you don't even have to struggle, it's just going to be part of your practice. The person I was with who was part of this chanting community, they had chants going on in their car, looping all the time. If I went to their home, chants were looping all the time. Again, not with words, just sounds. And I'm telling you, it does something to your body just to have that. You get still, you get quieter, your mind's softer, your mind's gentle, and guess what? That opens us up to this infinite love, this infinite bliss, this infinite joy. Again, people do that not because they have to, not because it's a spiritual thing to do, because it releases joy. It releases love. It is opening our hearts. So I'm inviting us to look at meditation, silence. Silence is golden, that it is a blissful experience that we want to go toward, not run against, or it's a discipline or we're forced. It's like a vacation. And so when we meditate 10 minutes a day, we're on a vacation. When we start humming throughout our day, we're taking our little soul on a vacation, our little self. We're just soothing it and creating this wonderful vibration of softness, of slowing down our mind, slowing down our heart, slowing down our pulse, and feeling the beauty and the harmony and the unlimited, unbounded joy of silence. Silence is golden. And then the final point, and this is the hardest one for me, maybe it comes easier to some of you, is being silent with other people. I was listening to a conductor, and he was giving a TED Talk in Milwaukee, so in my mind he's a conductor of the Milwaukee Symphony, but I actually don't know which city he's a conductor of. But he was talking about he wanted to get some silence because he was always around music, and so he went to an abbey for a retreat, and while he was there, he saw someone who was in the horn section that he hadn't seen for 10 years, and he said, we had been good friends, and I see him, and I see him at mealtime, and we sit at the same table. And he said it was just, neither of us could bring ourselves to talk or catch up over the 10 years. We just sat in the stillness. And he said it was just this beautiful scenery, and we were just taking it all in and eating. And he said it was just the most beautiful, rich connection that we were feeling. So later on in the retreat, we met and sat on a bench and caught up over the last 10 years. And he said, that's when I realized the power of connecting in silence. I really enjoyed hearing and connecting with him and catching up. He said, but the connection wasn't nearly as deep as when we were sitting in silence, eating together, not saying a word. We were connecting at a deeper level. When I was going to these 2-hour silent meditations, like I said, I never went to any of the services. I didn't participate in the community, but I would go to these silent meditations, and there was this one gentleman, and he always sat in a certain place, and I always sat in a certain place. I still remember him to this day. I feel like I know him. I've never spoken 2 words to the guy. But for 2 hours, every Friday and Sunday night, we were meditating in the same place, sitting in the same seats, doing the same thing. And there's this depth of connection. And it's beautiful. Shunryu Suzuki says we can communicate beyond words. Well, and I think we all know that. We've all had that experience. Probably most of you have had it, quite frequently, where you think of somebody and the phone rings. You know what the other person's going to say before they say it because you're feeling them at a deeper level, right? That connection. Our oneness is not on the external. Our oneness is in the internal. So the more connected we're on the internal and we're connecting with other people, we're feeling a deep sense of oneness that doesn't always have language, but we know that we know that we know that we've connected. And that connection is there when times are good or when times are bad. James Finley, who I've been listening to, and he was sharing about the ability to feel even in difficult moments, that the sweetness of that connection, even when it's difficult. And he gave the example of, he said, if you had a good friend, like a really good friend, and they said, can you come sit with my partner and myself, her partner's dying, so they're on hospice, and I want to go sit with them. Can you just be in the room with us? And he said, so just imagine yourself, you're sitting in the room, you're sitting in a corner, you're not saying anything, you're just being present. You're being that presence. And you see your friend hold the hand of her partner. And they know that there's really nothing left to be said. Everything's been said. And you just see them reach out and hold each other's hands. There's a tender beauty in that moment that we can't explain with our words. You know that person's leaving is part of the preciousness of that moment. And yet they're so full of love and just this presence we can't explain. That's what we start to feel when we're connecting with the silence. In that golden silence is golden even in those most difficult times when we have to say goodbye to somebody. When we're present with Jill leaving, we feel the sadness of her leaving, and yet in this moment she's right here. She's present. We're present with you, Jill. And in that presence we feel deeply, but it's a good feeling because that love is so profound. That love is so rich, and sometimes when we take each other for granted day in and day out, we just take it for granted. And yet when it's going to be about to be taken away, we suddenly realize the preciousness of you. But there's the preciousness of everyone in this room all of the time. And that's the hard part, is being connected to the preciousness of every moment when we're with someone. To know that, okay, I might see them tomorrow, I might have a conversation with them the next day, or if I say something I don't like today, I can fix it tomorrow. But to be fully in that stillness, in that full moment, that the divine presence is in that moment, is an extraordinary experience. And it's one I'm continuing to work on. It's a challenge for me. I have a friend, and I did talk with them, so I'm just going to say they're in another country, so no one here knows them, but I didn't ask for I can't use their specifics because I didn't talk to them. But it's been very profound. I've reconnected with them on social media, obviously, because they're in another country. And her partner is a non-dual meditator. And so she's become a non-dual meditator. And what a non-dual meditator, and this is a way to get to peace instantly. It's why I love Zen, because anytime I do Zen, I just start finding myself giggling and laughing. Because in that non-dualness, which we also teach here, is everything is the divine. Everything is the divine. And so where they are, it's such an interesting way the reason why she sticks out is because the way they do their relationship is so different. They're not striving. They don't want anything. They live in a desert. She's a writer. I'm not sure what he does because he doesn't like being on social media. So I know him less. And he has kids. And she talks about the kids. But it's always just with the presence of whatever's happening in the moment. It's never about, oh, I want this for them. I hope they have this. Or I hope to have this. I'm writing a novel and I hope it goes. It's never anything in the future. Everything is just as is in the moment. That full presence. And so the whole writing is just different, the whole way they talk about themselves. And she talks about this depth of experience in connection that she's never had before, because it's not primarily on the external, it's primarily meeting on the internal. Shunryu Suzuki talks about just sitting with somebody, and in that sitting, in that quiet, we know them better than if we knew them if we're talking over the tongue. It's what's happening underneath the tongue. It's what that is so powerful. And it's not that we don't want to have over the tongue. It doesn't mean that we don't enjoy each other and enjoy jabbing our jaws. We can do all of that stuff. But where we want to be identified with is that deep interior I am, because that's where the joy and the fulfillment and this deep, deep, deep love comes from. And then suddenly, so I've been reading, I always follow their posts because it's so different than anyone I know. And then about 2 months ago, she puts a post and she says, I need to give you an update. My beloved was, and she's my age, she was in my class in high school. My beloved has been suddenly diagnosed with a rare disease, and it's going very quickly. And so suddenly he's in a wheelchair. And she said, of course it's been difficult, but he's been practicing this for years, of just letting everything go and just accepting everything as is. And so I felt my sadness, and yet there's something underneath it. And we keep meeting in that underneath part. And there's this joy that we can't explain. You know. There's this joy it's not about what's happening externally. And they both are there. And people have responded to them. We don't know how to respond to this because this is terrible news, but you seem so full of joy. And she goes, yeah, but it's not joy like crazy joy. It's this deep, abiding presence, this deep feeling of connection that we can't even explain. And going back to that example of that bittersweet love, But it's always there, this presence, and that's where the joy is, and it doesn't come and go. I'm giving these difficult challenges because to recognize that the difficult challenges are going to always happen. Life in the external is hard and probably harder than it has been, but when we connect with that deep joy, and I love that reading because every time we connect with it, new things are possible. Because it's not determined, it's not limited one iota by what's happening out there. This deep presence of joy, this deep presence of love, this deep presence of peace, it's not limited one iota by what's happening on the surface, by the conditions and circumstances of your life, of the relationships you've had, the patterns that you've had, in our culture, what's happening, all the stuff, all the fear that is everywhere, and for rational reasons, there is a lot of fear, and so it's rational to be fearful, and yet when we continue, when we choose to have our practice into that stillness, we're meditating, we're chanting, we're humming, we're practicing being in that stillness in our everyday life, in our relationships, and how we interact with the world. The voice of God, that still small voice, can come booming through, and new life can happen in ways that we can't of ourselves come up with on our own, but it starts to pour through what we're saying or what we're thinking. So I guess, I feel agitated. This is why I'm working on it, because I've recognized, so I've at least seen the problem with myself. I can get agitated by something, and I'm very reasonable and rational, so my agitation is rational and reasonable, and my responses are, of course, very rational and reasonable. And my argument, so I have a very hard time convincing myself that my rational, to let it go. But it's not about letting it go. Because what I started to discover, because I've really been working on this, finding the stillness, finding that golden voice, the silence of golden, how I'm feeling agitated. When you feel agitated, you just go, it's going. And what I found, that's why I like journaling so much, because what I found in journaling is I'm with the presence. So I can be in the midst of my agitation, but there's a presence that I'm acknowledging when I'm journaling. I feel the divine light, I feel the divine love, so I'm both agitated, but I'm agitated in the divine presence, and everything calms down. My heart starts opening, and I can see things more clearly. So my practice, so I love it, that's why I love journaling. But what I recognize is I have a hard time doing that with other people. When I'm agitated and I'm talking to someone, I go into my surface mind, my rational thinking, and I don't get into the presence. And I recognize, I was like, why am I having such a hard time with this? And what I realized is I don't feel safe. Isn't that funny? Because I still have this world, human world is a very unsafe place. Even people who are spiritual and awake, I still am, it's a defense mechanism. I'm watching myself. And that what would happen in the midst of a conversation, in the midst of an agitation, if I just stopped, hummed a little bit, take a moment and allow the presence to be seen, to be felt in that midst of the agitation. That's going to change. It doesn't mean it's going to make the agitation go away, but it's going to start bringing in a new light. It's going to start bringing in a little bit of joy. It's going to start bringing in a little bit of peace. And the conversation is going to start shifting, not because I'm forcing it to change, not because I'm saying, go away, agitation. I'm not repressing it, but in the midst of the agitation, I'm acknowledging the presence with another person. Where two or more gathered, there I am. And so that is, for me, an incredible practice that I'm working on, and I find it still very difficult because I recognize, the small self of me likes to run things a little bit more when it's out there because I think that's safer, and that's a lie. That's a lie I've told myself. The safest place I can be is in the arms of the God, is in the arms of the divine presence. And when I'm talking to you, I'm talking to you, I'm talking to you, the safest place I can be is acknowledging the divine presence that's happening in our conversation. And to trust that in the midst of whatever else is going on. And so the more we are practicing this goldenness of silence, the healing energy of silence in every part of our life, when we're meditating, allowing ourselves to just be in that vacation place. Oh, and this is the final point, that the fastest way to go into silence, I should have started with this, the fastest way to go into silence is by accepting everything. That's what non-dual reality is. That's what a non-dual meditation is. So that means accepting the agitation as it's arising. That means if I'm judging somebody, I can go, oh, I'm being so unspiritual right now, and then just that judgment of being unspiritual has just disconnected me from myself, because now I'm blaming myself or mad at myself, rather than, oh, I was being judgmental. I accept that. It's why I get such a kick out of when I start reading Zen, because he accepts everything. He accepts all our weaknesses and all our strengths. You just accept it. And that's what this couple that I was talking about, they just accept everything that's rising, good stuff and bad stuff. Accept. You will find your mind gets quieter and quieter and quieter the more we're in a state of acceptance, rather than fighting what's happening or attaching to the way it should be. All those should-bes are like way up here and life is here. Well, that's going to cause not peace, not separation. Accept moment by moment. So when you're going into meditation, the fastest way to get to stillness is accept everything that's happening in meditation. Your mind is noisy? Okay, my mind's noisy. It's all right. There's lots of noise out there? Okay, there's a lot of noise out there. Acceptance. I'm supposed to be feeling bliss. Okay, I'm not feeling bliss. Acceptance. That is the quickest way to get to silence. The reason why we're not silent, if you look at your mind, as you've been paying attention to your inner world of silence tonight, the place where we're not silent is because we're attached, because the way something should be, or something should be that's not now, or we're resisting what's happening now. It should be something different, or I don't like this. Resistance and attachment. If we let go of the resistance and attachment moment by moment in a conversation, so even if I'm feeling agitated, there's the acceptance that I'm being agitated. Because as I've been watching myself, I recognize I'm so mad at myself for being agitated that creates more agitation, and then I feel more defensive, and then I have to explain myself more, and I just keep talking, and I keep talking because I'm in this circular of judgment of how I should be if I was a spiritual person, and I'm clearly not being spiritual. Blah, blah, blah. If I just said, okay, I'm agitated, I'm being judgmental, that's okay. I'm still in the divine, because the whole idea of non-dual is we can never be outside of spirit. No matter what's going on, no matter how judgmental or how angry I am, I'm still in God. I'm still in God. We keep reminding ourselves that not just in meditation, not just when we're humming, but in the midst of whatever's happening in the outer world, and everyone's blah, 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 blah. It's not bad to do that, but keep that still small voice. Keep that place that just accepts, okay, this is where we are now. This is where we are now. God is still here. God is still here. God's in the midst of this. Whatever's going on, the divine love, the divine peace, the divine joy, the divine beauty, the divine abundance, it's right here. It hasn't gone anywhere. There's no less divine love, beauty, harmony, peace now than there was 5 years, 10 years ago. We talk a lot about the way it was, good or bad, the way it could be. It's all right in this moment. There's no more divine presence in the past or in the future than there is right now in this moment. No condition, no circumstance, no thought in my head, no words that came out of my mouth can ever, ever, ever limit the beauty, the harmony, and the joy of pure spirit. Silence is golden. Let's enter into that wonderful golden place of prayer together as we practice 10 minutes of meditation every day, as we hum and chant throughout our day to relax our beautiful body and soul and mind and heart. And we bring that presence into our daily interactions with other people. For we gather together recognizing that this divine presence is not something that any of us have created. We are not creating the divine presence with our thoughts. Our thoughts are aligning with the divine presence that already is. Our thoughts can either call it forth, make us forget it. And today, in this moment, we are remembering to remember who and what we really are, that we are each and every one of us unique expressions of this divine, infinite, oceanic peace that knows no limit, that is birthless and deathless, this joy that is unlimited. All the good of the universe is right here and right now, right at the center of our being. It is not outside of our being, it is inside of us right now. Nothing can ever limit that good. Nothing can ever limit that joy, that bliss. And in fact, that bliss is greater than we could ever possibly imagine or have ever experienced before. It is pouring forth through our conscious awareness, our mental conscious awareness, our emotional conscious awareness, our physical conscious awareness. We are opening every avenue of our physical, emotional, and mental being on this planet to allow the oceanic waves of joy to wash through and as us, the oceanic waves of love, of peace, of harmony, of good, of beauty, of abundance to pour through in every aspect of our being in all areas of our life. No matter what is happening externally, we know internally the treasures of the kingdom, queendom of heaven that are right now alive and activated through our conscious awareness that we are it. And we have let go, we have let go and allow this beauty, this silence to speak its truth, to speak its reality, to feel into its reality through and as each and every one of us. Whatever is emerging in our life, those things that we call bad and those things that we call good, behind all of it is this beautiful, beautiful, golden stillness of love, of light, of joy. And what a gift that we have this wonderful awareness that we could tap into it, not just for a minute, but throughout our entire day, through our entire night, in every activity and function of our daily life. Silence is golden. It has everything we've ever needed and more. We give ourselves the joy of the rest in the silence. We give ourselves this joy, this healing joy. And as we are in this place together as a community, we surround our beautiful friend Jill, knowing that she is blessed on her journey, and Fabian, and I believe your daughter. And this move is effortless, full of grace, because this divine presence of abundance, of harmony, of peace, is going before them and making the crooked places straight, not through their will or their effort, but just simply by recognizing over and over and over and over the golden gifts of this silence that's at the center of their being. In the midst of all this activity, we see that golden energy flowering and blooming in every area of their life. And we feel this for our entire Lighthouse community, which is in its own transition, becoming still as we are shifting with the COVID, all the stuff that's happening. This beautiful Lighthouse community stands and lives in the grace of stillness and silence, constantly being healed in that vacation light of joy, of peace, and of harmony. No circumstance can ever limit who and what this community is. And so how grateful I am to feel this and to know this. And just take a moment of stillness, and in that stillness, if any names come, don't force them, but if a name comes forth to you, allow those names to come forth and to be blessed by this golden silence. We're going to take 1 minute of just being still. Silence is golden, and so it is. Amen.